Good morning, everybody, and this is your DAX day trade setups for today. So, if we just sort of minimize the chart a little bit so we can just get a bigger view of it, we are technically still sideways. We're still in the sideways motion. As such, trend is still up on the daily. We do have a fairly strong crossover now, though. So you can see we've had a few crossovers, but nothing that has been pointing down like this. And often when you see this, I think there's a good example there. When you see that kind of move to the downside, you can see it typically happens for a couple of days and it gets driven down to the lower end of the stochastics. Now, that would be a buying area on the higher time frames for me. Okay, but we are pretty much bottom of range as far as I'm concerned, and each one of these tails for me is going to be bottom of range until we start breaking below these swing lows here. This is bottom of range for me. Second thing to bear in mind is we have a lot of gaps to the downside. There are so many gaps. I mean, there's one, there's another one, there's one over there. There's that one. Yep, that one's also open, so that's another one here. So you've got all these gaps to the downside, all the way down to this level here at 13,000. It is some massive gaps, and then you can see even more gaps below 13,000. All the way down to 11,000. And I can swing back even further, when you've got these gaps to the downside at around 8,000 as well. So anyway, those are really far from us, but the point I'm making is trend is up. We're looking for some kind of a pullback and some kind of a reset to allow us to buy into this. The other thing to bear in mind is your weekly. So look at the weekly, they have crossed over, oscillators crossed over, and the faster moving oscillator is now almost completely below the 80, which is a very bearish signal for me. And looking at the weekly, that's kind of the area that I would want to see us hit, which is 14,200. That would be a fairly decent opportunity. What I do want to do here on the weekly is just get this trend line here. Okay, and then let's come down to levels that we can trade today. So pretty big sell-off, 2% move down, and you can see grouping of the oscillator. So we are pretty much oversold at the moment. You'd want to see some kind of a pullback onto structure and then an opportunity to sell into that. The nearest one that I can see is up here at 15,300. So any kind of move up into this area would get me short again for another move down. If we start looking at the hour, that's the one that you need to pay attention to at the moment. And you can see a bit of a consolidation. So what could happen here as well is we have let's just go up there. So we have a consolidation here on the level, and then we break the consolidation, come up, test it, and move down. So there is a strategy very similar to the London breakout strategy, which is the opening range strategy for the DAX. So you take the first hour, you can take the first hour of pre-market trade, or you take the first hour of actual trade. So it depends how you want to trade it, but either one of those, and then you use that as the range, and break to the upside, you're long for the heights of the range, break the downside, you're short for the heights of the range. So for me, I suspect one of two things can happen. We're either going to break the upside, we're going to find some resistance here at 15,300 for a move down and then break through the range again, or alternatively we're going to muck around here until the USA opens and then drop below the bottom of this range. So yesterday was a pretty big move on the DAX, and often when that happens, you tend to have a bit of soul seeking come into play, where everybody doesn't really trade much and just ranges about before either going into a bigger range or alternatively just a continuation to the downside. So I do suspect continuation to the downside is the one that we're looking for. There's way too much noise at the moment. That's the other trend line to pay attention to as well. So finish off on the 15-minute. That's kind of what I'd be looking at. Look for the fractals on the 15-minute. There's the closest one here. So levels you want to pay attention to are going to be 15,230, and you can see that's fairly close to this trend line that we have here. Okay, so that's the first one. Then the second one will be 15,237 and 15,300 area. Those are the ones that I'd be paying attention to at the moment. And then at the same time, pay attention to this range. You You can see on the 15 minute we're already grouping the upside. So I actually suspect we're probably going to use this swing high, this bar here, as a level as well. So yeah, that's kind of my view at the moment. Pay attention to that, and you'll probably find some more shorts on offer, because that is what's looking like on the 3 hour. We've got the crossover of the moving averages. We're just very far from them, but I suspect more downside coming today. Okay, that's it for me. Hope it helps, and we will catch up with you later. Cheers for now.